But I also have what's called bipolar type 2. There's some part of me knew that I'll get through this if I just keep going. So I started on anxiety meds and things like that because they completely discounted me. But as the meds didn't work, I would, try a different one and try a different one. So like I go through this cycle of 2 or 3 years where I've been like pushing it and I get sick of it. But, I've had so much mental struggle. It's not even funny. But like you start eating carnivore, right? Because I know we got to define what I eat, like keto, carnivore. Back then it was just keto. So I'd eat some green vegetables. But I felt so much better. And then over the year, I just started dropping the veggies and they started just going to waste. Like I just wasn't favoring them. And I felt better when I didn't eat them. But I felt so much better. Like everything, inflammation, everybody talks about. 2 weeks. 80% of my symptoms are gone. And I was basically filling out paperwork with my doctor's suggestion because I couldn't work anymore. I feel for these people so much because the first thing you absolutely want to do is go to metabolicmind.org.
Hello and welcome. Carrie here from Healing Humanity, the Power of a Proper Human Diet. And today I'm honored to have Michael B. on the channel. Michael, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor. Love the channel. Love all the people out there. This community is amazing.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, the community is something, that's for sure. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your story, sharing your story, and possibly inspiring some folks out there. Maybe if we could start out, could you tell me a little bit about your life before you found keto, carnivore, proper human diet?
Yeah. So I'm quirky. I'm a weirdo, right? I've been my whole life emotionally sensitive and fun and creative and all that, right? But I also have what's called bipolar type 2. Pretty serious. Everybody pretty much knows what that is, right? But I got diagnosed in 2024. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to say that since about 2007, I kind of started going to psychiatrists and saying, hey, I have a family history of this. And, I have problems with sleep and I have, problems with emotional dysregulation occasionally. And it happens like once a year or once every 2 years or whatever. So about every 3 years before that, 2007, I would get like episodes of mental illness. I could feel it, but it would go away. It would last for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, but it would go away. And the rest of the year, I'd be okay. But I decided in 2007 to start kind of addressing it. You know what I mean? You're like, why suffer, right? So I started on anxiety meds and things like that because they completely discounted me about the bipolar because my life is fairly functional at that point. I can work, relationships and not, getting divorces and getting fired and things like that, which is unfortunately a common thing for us. But as the meds didn't work, I would, try a different one and try a different one. So like I go through this cycle of 2 or 3 years where I've been like pushing it and I get sick of it. And then I feel great because I'd be off the meds, right? Because the meds are making me feel great. Because if you know anything about bipolar, you're not supposed to take things like SSRIs and SNRIs because they actually make the bipolar worse. And that's usually one of the signs. But for whatever reason, it took, the 15 years. So that cycle of horribleness just kept getting smaller and smaller in cycle. So instead of, 3 years apart or 1 year apart, it would be, at the end, it was daily. Like I would cycle like within a day. I'd have bad periods and, not as bad periods. But, I've had so much mental struggle. It's not even funny. But, what do you do? So I got diagnosed finally because some of the medicine sent me so over the moon. I ended up in the hospital in 2022. Yeah, and then you get your diagnosis because once you're in the hospital for bipolar, you get it's like one of this flag line that says you got it. You got your diagnosis. So you start taking the meds, right? So the first one they put you on is lithium, which can be very, very effective. But it's also got, dangerous side effects over decades and decades. And they give you a speech and they say, we're going to test your kidneys and your thyroids in a year. And then in 2 or 3 years, maybe the numbers will kind of start dropping a little bit, but don't worry, we can treat your thyroid, right? Well, before I got out of the hospital, because you're in, if you don't know, you're in usually about 5 days is what insurance will cover, whether you're sick or not. And if you're really, really sick, the doctor can put in a new code and get you in a little bit longer, but generally 5 days. They said, oh, well, your thyroid number is a little troubling already. And I've only taken it for like 3 days. And so are the kidney numbers too. And I said, all right, like, so we'll do blood tests more frequently. And then, and the summer went on. So like July and August went on, and I started to lose vision, started to get grayness in my vision, like literally on the sides. And I only have vision in one eye. I'm blind in my right eye since I was 4. So to drive, you have to have 120 degrees in Massachusetts, peripheral vision like that. And I had lost enough. I lost my license. And I was filling out paperwork for disability. My brain was going away. Like I literally couldn't remember nouns every time I spoke a sentence. This was in November of 22. And I started going online saying, well, I can't take lithium because it made the pressure in my eye go up. And we tested it on and off for a couple of months. And I paid for a couple of tests that I needed to get the pressure, because the insurance will only cover like every so often. To know if it was a medicine. So I'd start the meds, pressure came back, stop the meds, pressure went away. So I was stuck, no meds. And the other meds don't really work as well without something like a lithium or something like that. So I was stuck. So I found patient perspectives, kind of like, watching, carnivore success stories with the cancer and things in the community that we see. It's like that, but they have, like people with bipolar. And I found Bipolar Cast, which is Matt Pazuki, which I think you know the name, and Dr. Ian Campbell, who is somebody else you should also know. He is a researcher in Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh, who basically had bipolar himself. He worked at Rockstar Games as a composer, and just an amazing guy. He changed his career. Now he researches bipolar and keto, and related subjects at University of Edinburgh. And I found out about it through the podcast. And if you want to know more, there's an interview on Bipolar Cast, April of 23. So within 2 weeks of doing it, I had to find a doctor, because I should say that if you have a serious mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar, you don't want to do keto by yourself, because it's powerful treatment. And when you combine it with your other treatments, now you could be over treated. You got to have your medication monitored by a doctor. And there's also steps to take to prepare and do keto right. And you go hypomanic. A lot of people, you literally, I don't know if people know about up and down, but you go up. And I did. And I went up for, I don't know, a good 3-4 weeks when I went in. But I felt so much better. Like everything. Inflammation, everybody talks about, like you start eating carnivore, right? Because I know we got to define what I eat, like keto, carnivore. Back then it was just keto, so I'd eat some green vegetables. But I felt so much better. And then over the year, I just started dropping the veggies, and they started just going to waste. Like I just wasn't favoring them, and I felt better when I didn't eat them. So I know I got lots of sensitivities and different things. But, that's the backstory. But, we're talking like 8 months of me living in the basement by myself, avoiding my family because I didn't want to upset anyone, because everything everyone said made me mad. And you don't want to do that, and I know you've had some depression stuff and you recovered. So you can kind of relate to some of that.
Right. Could you tell us just a little bit more about bipolar and what it kind of entails?
Sure. So bipolar, there's 2 types. There's type 1 and type 2. The difference in type 1 is you get a psychosis. And type 2, you don't get the psychosis. So I never thought I was like going to save humanity or went off and spent $10,000, to change my business or things like that. They're much smaller scale. So I like waste money on a musical instrument that costs $500 instead of spending $10,000. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't as delusional, but you still get it. But you go through periods of too much energy where you stop sleeping, and that's when you get sick too, because you're excited, you feel great. I don't know personally, but I guess it's like doing hard drugs of some sort. Like it just literally like gives you to go for a week and or 2 or more, and you do creative projects. And I can think of times in my life where I've done that. Since I was a teenager, you know, so I probably had some level of this, and then you crash. So you literally, you get depressed and you go down, and that lasts for type 2 way, way longer than in type 1, which is really bad. So in some ways, type 1 is dangerous because you do crazy things, and you end up, homeless and things like that, but type 2, you live in depression, and you're just awful to everybody around you. So, nobody can talk to you, nobody can suggest anything. You can't get out of the house, can't do anything. It's hard to work, or impossible, honestly. And it's an energy dysregulation. So the thought is, with this new modalities of treatment, right, with metabolic therapy, is that your brain isn't any different. Like Dr. Georgia Ede says, and I know you've talked to, like, she says, at last I checked, the brain is part of my body just like every other organ. Why should, the dysfunction, or, is it energy, or is it mitochondrial dysfunction? Is it a potassium problem? But bipolar, all of those three things can kind of contribute. And so can stress, and so can bad diet, obviously, things like that. Because if you're inflamed, now your cortisol's up and your symptoms are up. So the best way to describe it for me, the way I get, is if you have been hangry from pasta, right? Like, you eat rice and pasta, you eating bread, and like 2 hours later, you're like, oh my God, I'm hangry. Picture that like times 10, to 11. Like, that's how I experience the bipolar. Anger, usually, agitation, anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
I really like your description of that, because it reminds me of mine with depression. Just mad at everyone. Just leave me alone. No matter what people say, they make me mad. I don't know if you experience this too, Michael, but one of the frustrating parts for me with the depression was then trying to not, like, I'm pulling myself down. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't want to take my loved ones down with me, but on the same side, it's very hard for me to just fake it and be like, everything's just fine. So you feel like a phony or a fake kind of doing it at the same time, which seems to compound the misery of it all a little bit.
I agree 100%. And then you start to think, like, too, like, maybe it's better I not be around them. Like, I'm hurting them more than, and then you start doing that. And then, your partner gets all like, oh my God, like, I'm going to lose them one way or the other. Either I'm going to lose them for being sick, or I'm going to, just lose them, like, and they're worried about your health at the same time. And they're also agitated by everything that's going on. It's unbelievable. Plus, they're taking care of you, because you're reduced to a child, basically, like, emotionally.
Right. It's like you're sick. It's like you're just sick forever.
Yeah.
That's why when someone has a mental health issue, whether it's bipolar, depression, or whatever it may be, that was always a pet peeve of mine, when people would say, you just need to go out and go for a walk. Just go walk it off. That's going to fix it.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong.
Yeah.
But you don't want to hear it.
Right.
No, there's no telling you to go outside and get some sun. And if I had realized how important that was, I do it every day now. I go out and I sit in the sun in the morning, and I sleep better at night, and that's just the best way to protect yourself from bipolar, besides the diet.
So you tried the traditional means. You tried going to the doctor, getting medication, the lithium. So it sounded like that sort of worked a little bit, but then didn't, because you're getting the side effects.
It did. Yeah, no, it actually did manage the illness and the symptoms. That's how you judge it. Is it managing your symptoms, or is it not managing your symptoms? And are the side effects okay? And, I had gained weight already from not eating well. I was just over 200 pounds. I'm 140 now. Wow. And I did that within 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, last year, which is too fast. I've lost too much muscles, and I've had some medical stuff we can talk about, because it relates to, how do you manage the diet and things like that, when you're sick and different stresses come up. It's been quite a challenge.
So you
want to get too tangent-y, I'll follow.
Right. So you found your solution through, I guess, another individual stories, Matt's story.
Matt Bazuki.
Matt Bazuki, so I've learned about Matt through Metabolic Mind.
Yes, I know them as well. Yes.
Yeah, which is a great YouTube channel and resource. So that inspired you to sort of change. I guess, what do you think, Michael, for this is my big concern, having lived through depression most of my adult life. There's so many people right now that are going through it. What do they do? Like, what's the solution? Like,
Sure. So you have to, with bipolar. Let's do bipolar, but it's schizophrenia. It's the same exact thing. They're very similar, related. The way you get your symptoms are different, and I think where you're sick is a little different in your brain, maybe, but it's very similar. And do you know the connection with epilepsy and the treatments for epilepsy?
yes.
You know, 100 years ago, they knew that. They said, the doctor said, let's make a diet that mimics starving, or fasting, I should say, not starving. Starving's pretty negative. Fasting is the positive one, right? They knew that when people fasted, their seizures would be less. So what he did was he had people fast, kids even, and there's been more studies since that 100 years too, and keto and its effectiveness. But some of the medicines for bipolar are the epilepsy medicines, like I think quetiapine or Seroquel or one of those. And forgive me if I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to quote too, and I get nouns mixed up. But they help. They help with the antipsychotic part. So like lithium helps you with your mania, and then they usually put another pharmacy on top that has an antipsychotic if you need it, to keep that part of it down. So you kind of crushing it from both sides with the meds. And the interesting thing with keto is you don't need to do two. It's like the one treatment. But most people I know are still on meds and tapering off. So you asked the question, how do you do this? So what you want to do is you want to at least tell your doctor you're going to do keto, because you've heard that it can help your symptoms, and it does, and it can help the symptoms of the meds too. So if you're taking quetiapine and it makes you gain weight, and you're eating keto, you're not eating all those sugars that contribute, that medicine helps you store, because it raises your insulin. So what I did was I begged a doctor. I went online and I searched, and it's very, very difficult. And people text me all the time. They go to my website and they try to, how do we do this? And I say, well, you got to find a doctor that's at least knowing that you're going to do it, and you'll be supported with your medications. And then you have to prepare. You want to do blood tests so that you know where your LDLs are and all that other garbage, right? Just so you can compare it later. So your triglycerides are going to go down. Your HDL is going to go up, right? And you can, have a party, right? But you also want to start intermittent fasting, and you want to start eating way, way, way less junk food, like right away when you decide. Not even when you decide to go keto, but when you decide you're going to go keto, you immediately should do both of those things. You should start shrinking your eating window in, so that when you start adapting, you'll adapt a lot faster. And I know keto, which I always respected about your stuff, because a lot of the carnivore people kind of muddy the waters between, there's keto, which is eat the junk food that says keto at the store, and or they don't appreciate how really low carb is, or what carbs are in. But there's real therapeutic keto, where you're eating the right amount of fat, which is a lot, and the right amount of protein, and very low carb. And you got to figure out where that number is. So once you switch, you got to do electrolytes, as and get that in, and check back with your doctor, because you're probably going to go hypomanic for a couple of weeks, and they want to make sure that you sleep. So they might give you something to help you sleep. I got through it without that, and I didn't crash after, which every time I've had hypomania my whole life, I've crashed after and had 3, 5, 6, 8 months of depression, right?
Wow.
Nothing. So, and it lasted way longer too. So it's like, I don't think that people should be as afraid of it as they can, but it can take months for you to feel way better. But within 2 weeks, I'd say 80%. 2 weeks. 80% of my symptoms are gone. And I was basically filling out paperwork with my doctor's suggestion, because I couldn't work anymore. I mean, I was still working, but I couldn't do my job. I was really, really struggling. I couldn't remember my password. I would be worried to break something in IT, because I do IT. When you're not feeling good, you try to fix something and boom, you've made it worse, right? So I was always afraid. And then, within a month after that, a couple weeks, started it, 2 weeks, felt way better. Every month from then, some symptom got better. So I'd say, but it took about, the longest thing was the anxiety. Like I'd chatter my teeth. That took about 8 months to go away. So even with my interview on the Bipolar cast, you can see me chattering my teeth and things like that. And I'm a little hyper and a little anxious, still. But unless I go through stress now, I don't feel symptoms. I still can, but they go away. Like I accidentally bought the wrong Gatorade last April, and they use zeros. This is the thing that we all drink. And I bought the regular one. It was hot, and I was building my deck out back. The deck had sunk, and I'm drinking, I'm guzzling. I'm like, this tastes too good. And I looked at the bottle like 4 in, and I got symptomatic for like 3 days.
Wow.
But in the past, that would have been devastating. Like I might have ended up back in the hospital. But it's just, no, it just at home. I knew it was happening, so I didn't yell at people because I knew I was symptomatic, as much as I could handle it. And it went away 3 days in. Unbelievable. Like it's a miracle. It really is a miracle.
Right? 80% of your symptoms in 2 weeks. That's incredible. I get this question about my depression all the time, and I'm trying to be cautious with people because I'm like, everyone's different. It may not be the same, but the number I hear over and over again is usually around 3 weeks. Someone has some sort of like incredible, whoa, I wasn't expecting that to happen so quickly. Not necessarily all the depression or anxiety or those things are gone, but usually around 3 weeks, which is that's just incredible to me. Like, Michael, does it make you mad, or are you just like, I got to focus on myself going forward, but that you're given medications and this and that, and the whole time, 2 weeks later,
okay,
your nutrition.
That's a great question. I had so much anger, you cannot believe it. And you can hear it in the Bipolar cast, even though I was up and happy and talking to Matt and Ian, I was angry for a long time. I would say until probably last fall. I did a lived experience talk at the first CME accredited Metabolic Psychiatry conference in Boston. They had my doctor actually put it on. After dealing with me, he's had some family issues. He's helped people with keto, and he's had a couple of patients. He's had some patients. But after seeing me, I think they kind of pushed like, hey, this is a movement. And I think, like, I'm not saying I'm responsible for anything he did. I'm saying it coincided, like he saw what the good things happened to me and his other patients. And I think I dropped a lot of the anger finally, because I got to be in front of all the doctors, and I was, cracking jokes and basically saying how angry I was that they took so long to diagnose me and all the other crap. And I was supposed to talk about my lived experience. So I vented probably more than I should have, but it really did help me. And I think I've dropped a lot of the anger since. Not all of it, but quite a bit. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, when you first started, because there's a lot of people watch my channel, they're brand new to carnivore, keto, all of this. How hard was it for you to transition from what you were eating your entire life to kind of going against the grain?
Quick interruption. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in learning more about our documentary, Healing Humanity, The Power of a Proper Human Diet, or supporting it, please visit donate.healinghumanity.movie. Our goal is to reach millions of people that are hopeless right now, and sharing the examples of real people over the course of 1 year that are undertaking a proper human diet to overcome obesity, type 2 diabetes, depression, anxiety, fertility issues. We couldn't do it without you. We thank you so much. We are also selling these shirts, Healing Humanity, The Power of a Proper Human Diet. Every penny we get from those goes towards the documentary. And last, we have memberships. If you click the little join button, it's best to do it on desktop. Under any one of my YouTube videos, you can join and become a member. We have hundreds of members right now. We do members only videos. We do members only behind the scenes. You can email me as a member and I'll answer you. And every penny from that goes to support the documentary. And the last thing is we have these Redmond's portable salt shakers. These things are awesome. You can get the best salt. You can take it with you. We sell these on the website along with our water bottles and cutting boards, and every penny from all of those goes 100% towards supporting the documentary. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which is completely free. All of these links are in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to today's video.
I have a two-part answer. Like, one is that I did the paleo back in 2010 or whatever, and I went hypomanic then too, and I felt great. I lost weight. So I knew how to adapt, even though I didn't know it was keto at the time. So I did it back in a couple of months earlier before the big attempt. And so the short answer is I adapt very easily. I did my research. I knew about intermittent fasting. I knew about electrolytes. And I knew that you didn't have to have that adaptation flu, you know, that they call it. So I adapted really, really, really quick. And I'm also the same person that can say, I do this now, and I just do it. So if I decide I don't eat something, I don't eat something. But the second half is it's not easy. People think that just because somebody can make the decision and can live by it and have no problem doing that, it doesn't mean it's easy. It's very difficult. I used to live to eat. I still do. You know, it wasn't eat to live. It was live to eat. And like fried rice and pizza, that's a ritual to me. You know what I mean? Like literally there'd be times of the year or the day or the month where I'd be like, this is what we eat right now because we're celebrating. And I'd have set foods and you know, they weren't good for me. So it is really, really difficult. But I also made the switch in a second, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah. That's one of the things I get, it's kind of frustrating with like family and friends where you see them suffering and they look at me and they're like, I could never do what you did. And it's like, it's hard, but then once you get going, it's like, this isn't that hard. Just, you got to get going. It goes against everything we've ever been told. So it's so unnatural for people. I think that's kind of the hardest part, but
yeah.
So
well, I think part of it is being wacky too. You know what I mean? Like I've always, like I spent 13 years as a vegan, or 10 years as a vegan, 3 years as a vegetarian.
Wow.
Just because I was sensitive to food and trying to find out. I've done every freaking weird food eating thing you can think of, you know, trying to find out what bothers me. Why am I always sick? You know,
with all those different diets you've done over your life, does this feel different? Like, what's to say that this keto carnivore isn't just another diet like you've tried for many years before? Does it feel different in any way to you?
Yeah, none of those ever got rid of arthritis or IBS symptoms or the mood symptoms. Like that's the best one right there, right? None of them have ever done that. They would make me maybe lose weight temporarily, but then gain a whole bunch of weight, you know, like all the things everybody else gets, you know. But
Right.
yeah, or my labs were always really, really low. When I was vegan, my LDL was really, really low, which now is associated with higher mortality risk, really low LDL, right? So what a surprise that is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it seems like I've done all sorts of different diets. It seems like this one, it seems the most natural, where the other ones seemed more forced, or I was counting calories or forcing myself or starving myself, or it just didn't seem sustainable like this one.
I did okay with vegan, but I was, as my friends would call me, the junk food vegetarian, which is basically bread, pasta, pizza.
Right.
That's not real vegetarian. That's not eating veggies and being healthy in some other way. You know what I mean? That wasn't what I was doing.
So
stick Coca-Colas would be in that menu too.
yeah,
you know, a day.
So 2 weeks in, 80% of your you notice improvement. So you went into this for the bipolar. Did you notice other changes?
Yep. Lower back, arthritis. I play instruments and I would get pain in my wrists just from playing. So I go to rehearsal, come back, and then my wrist would hurt for days, you know, gone, like completely gone. And I had an appointment with my doctor today and I asked her if she could hear my heart murmur. Because I know, like you did a video recently, which was really cool about a more serious thing that you've dealt with. But she's like, yeah, it's really faint. She's like, did you have one? Was it a problem? I'm like, and like, I just laugh because I'm just like, this is not, you know, I'm not trying to compare myself to Carrie, but it made me think about it. You know, like it's so many different things. I've had Meniere's, you know, it make me dizzy. I had migraines; those are gone. I know there's more. I know there's tons. I mean, 60 pounds. You know, how can you complain about that?
Right. Yeah, it's almost like we got to keep a log. I do the same thing where I'm like, and then that happened. And I'm like, oh yeah, this big huge thing happened too. That's one thing that worries me. That the human brain is weird that way, where we normalize things. And I'm like, I don't want to take this. You normalize it, and then you tend to take it for granted, or at least I do. So I'm like, I don't want to take this for granted, like how good I feel, and trick my brain into believing, oh, it's just always been this way. It's definitely not. So,
Right.
can you talk a little bit, like, with the depression, with bipolar, was there a point where you were just hopeless?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I dealt with, you know, SIs, STs, if I can say it that way, when I was 14, and obviously never went through with it, right? But I knew no matter how bad it got, I would be able to do that thing where I decide this is not for me. You know what I mean? Even though it's in your head and it's yelling at you. You know what I mean? Like the SIs and the STs they're there, and it was really, really, really bad. But I think because of my experience as a kid, I knew I could work around it. You know what I mean? Like I knew it was artificial, if that makes sense.
Right.
There's some part of me knew that I'll get through this if I keep going.
Where do you think you'd be right now if you didn't find keto?
We would have sold our home, and we would have had to rent. Being neurodivergent and sick for so long, you know, finances were a problem. So we probably would have had to sell and adjusted to a lower income. You know, it's already hard to pay for stuff now. But like it would have been impossible to work, and I would have basically cut my pay in half or worse. And we would have had to find a new way to live, and I wouldn't have gotten my brain back. You know, I was losing nouns every sentence. Like I literally like forget cat or dog or, you know, it didn't have to be big words either. It was just like the stress, I think was what I think it was, the stress of the recall. I'd be like, oh, what is that? Why did I come in the kitchen? You know, like it was really, really bad. So I don't, and I don't even want to imagine, you know, I don't know if I'd still be married. You know what I mean? Because of the torment I put on my family, I'm not sure I could have put them through that much longer. So, you know, I would have lost my job, my home, my family, for sure.
Yeah. The finding your words thing, I can totally relate to you on that one. I used to do that all the time. My girls would make fun of me because they'd say, empty the thing, and I almost have to like write it down or like, let me draw a picture. And I was asking Dr. Eid about that. I'm like, is that brain fog? Like, what is the mechanism behind it? And I think a lot of it's energy and inflammation. I'm not sure. But the biggest thing that I realized was I knew I had it before, but until I started eating this way and getting out of that fog, I didn't realize how deep it was. It was much deeper than like my clarity, my cognitive ability. So you're finding your words better. Are you noticing anything else that seems sort of unusual? Like a lot of people, I heard Joe Rogan say, for example, when he reads books, it's so much easier to comprehend things and process things in the brain.
Yeah, one of the first things I did back last February or March when I was starting to feel good, you know, really good, as read. I hadn't read in I don't know how long. I read I think it was Phil Collins' biography, probably. Yeah, autobiography. Probably that one. And I couldn't do it. You know, I still do Audible more than reading because it's easier for my brain to pay attention to that Audible signal coming in. But yeah, no, reading was impossible, but now it's not. And I can work again. You know what I mean? Like I do a technical job. It's difficult. You know, I can break things, you know, and I'm not now, you know, so it's so fulfilling, you know, and the medicines didn't do that. The medicines made me not emotionally dysregulated outwardly. So like it would get rid of the outbursts. it would even you out energy wise, but not necessarily in a good way. You know, like you felt okay, but you also didn't really have a lot of energy. And, you know, the medicine's heavy too. But, and, you know, if you got the quetiapine and things like that, tamping you down, you've also got the metabolic stuff and the tiredness from that, you know, so it's not optimal. So even if the medicine had worked, I don't think I'd be in even close to as good a place. Now, most people I know, they still take their meds and they taper off, you know, over time. It can take 3 years. It can take, you know, at least to taper off properly and not, you know, but the benefit they get is they get the benefit of the medicine and the keto at the same time. And they generally, like, if somebody met them, they would have no idea they had mental illness, which I don't think is true for everyone that just does medicine. It might, you know, maybe there's a good amount of people, but it's not for everyone. It wasn't for me.
Right. It's helping with the medication, the mental health part, but then it's also fixing these other things they might not have even known were wrong. We interviewed Professor Thomas Seyfried regarding cancer and metabolic therapy, and he said something very similar. They're actually healing their body when they're going through chemo, doing strict ketogenic therapy, and but they're healing these other things like type 2 diabetes and other issues they may never even known that they had. So
dementia.
Yeah.
How huge is that? How huge is just dementia alone or type 2 diabetes alone, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-boggling that it's this simple.
Yeah. So why is it so simple? Have you thought about this more? Like, because before I'm like, I don't know, humans overcomplicate things. Is it just we're, as humans, we've kind of departed so far away from what's natural for humans, mainly in the foods we're eating? Or
yeah, who is it that said, you know, we're the only species smart enough to create their own food and then too stupid to eat it? Who I forget who said that.
Right? Oh, I love that.
You know, I think that really explains it. I think it's just simply we're eating over-processed stuff, and over time, as your insulin resistance goes up and up, it becomes more aggravating. It becomes more inflammatory, and you need to tamp that down. So that's why it's simple, because you stop eating. It's an elimination of the things that were making you sick.
Right.
And once you do that, you know, your immune system is hopefully stronger and you start to rebuild. And I'm not, you know, 100% with everything. I got some medical stuff that's come up with infections in my GI recently. So I've been real strict. Like, I'm just like, I'll do a little bit of chicken and red meat, you know, like right now, and I'm not eating anything else because I have to figure out what's going on and get strong again. I was in the hospital for a week a month ago, and I lost so much muscle, and I'm already too small. You know, I lost too much weight already. So I'm working on that now. But I also realized I probably don't eat enough. Like, it's so hard to eat because your satiety is so quick when you eat meat and fat. Like, it's like, oh, good, I'm done, half a pound. But I need to eat like at least, you know, 14 to 2,000 calories. And I probably wasn't getting close. So my goal now is like 5 eggs when I'm eating eggs, which I'm not. And a pound and of meat, or a pound and a half, you know, like a pound of meat and 5 eggs, or a pound and a half of meat. And it's tough. I can't get it, but it's better than it was. So I'm starting to rebuild and feeling better. But you know, I have since too. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have since taken coaching training. So I've become a keto coach, and I just literally announced it recently on my YouTube channel. Said, hey, I'm killing my silly music channel, and it's going to be keto now. If you don't like it, it's killed the channel. That's okay. So I got more. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's a little delay. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say I pretty much did the same thing on my channel. We're just talking about this from now on. I'm more passionate about this than anything. I'll have a link to Michael's channel in the description below, so everyone go check it out. Michael, like on this part, you mentioned earlier therapeutic ketosis, and I've heard Dr. Brett talk about that on Metabolic Mind quite a bit. Would you mind just telling us a little bit, like, what are some of the nuances between I'm doing keto, I'm doing low carb, I'm in therapeutic ketosis?
Right. Sure, I'd love this. Yeah, no, this is my favorite topic, and that's why I've always respected about your channel too. Is you understand ketosis, and a lot of people don't. There's, like Georgia Ede has in her book, she has, when you're having trouble, there's quiet paleo, which you can eat, like a Lauren Cordain or Mark Sisson, kind of way. Like they eat berries once a week or once a day, even sometimes if they're metabolically flexible. And that's all animal products, but some berries, things you would find in nature. Then there's low carb, where you start cutting out seed oils, you start cutting out all junk food, things like that, obvious carbs, maybe bread and pasta and things like that. And that's actually helpful for a lot of people, just that. Like even if you just did that, you'd have help. But then the next step is you step up your fat intake and you lower the carbs dramatically to very low carb to less than 20. And once you get to that level, that's what Verta says 20. They're the ones that did a lot of these studies years back, a few years back. You want to get your ketone level up, and you want to get your fasting glucose down. So mine is usually like 85 in the morning for glucose, and my ketones will be anywhere from, depending on whether I'm sick, at 0.5, or if I'm doing really great, at 3. So I can, but the therapeutic part is, if you have to be in the ketosis every day. You can't just like be in ketosis at night, or be in ketosis on the weekend, or be in ketosis every couple of weeks, or I cheat and then it takes you 4 days to get back into ketosis again. To get the therapeutic benefit, especially for mental illness, you want to raise that fat and lower the carbs and have moderate protein, so that if you eat too much protein, theoretically, it's kind of, this is all new stuff, right? Pete, you will get an insulin spike if you eat way too much, and you won't be in ketosis just eating all meat alone. You have to add fat in. Does that make sense? So the difference is, are you getting the therapeutic effect? So it's kind of vague. Like, I'm eating enough fat that I'm getting a therapeutic effect. Okay, you're in therapeutic ketosis. It's not like a definition, like, oh, at 1.5, you're in therapeutic. It's, what is it for you? Because how inflamed are you? How mentally sick are you? Or everywhere else in your body too. So Dom D'Agostino, doctor in Florida, if you're familiar with him, he says 1.0 and above is probably better than being at the 2 or the 3s long term. So I'm kind of listening to him in that, and I'm trying, I don't push my fat, as high, as long as I keep my numbers in. So all the trouble I had recently, I never dropped out, and part of it was intermittent fasting. Because I was having the gastric trouble, I wasn't eating. So it kind of makes it easy to be in ketosis, because if you stop eating, you go into ketosis. Everybody does. When you're 20, you go in every night, and then you eat the next day and you clear it. Does that help? Does that explain it enough? Or
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Because we get a lot of people that start and they're like, well, I'm doing low carb. Why isn't this working? I'm like, well, you could do low carb and not get any fat, and you could do low carb, and if you're intermittent fasting, or you could do low carb and getting exercise, and whether or not you're in deep ketosis or not can be affected by all of those things. You mentioned fasting too. So you have been doing have you done any long-term fast or just intermittent fasting?
I can go a couple days without thinking. So like when I was really sick and I was about to go in the hospital and didn't know like what was going to happen, I did it then because everything I ate hurt. And I just, did 2-3 days, no sweat. And then when I was in the hospital, the whole time, this is the best. I felt like I was like, yeah, carnivore, for the win. The day they let me out, the only reason they let me out was they realized they weren't going to do more procedures on me. So they said, okay, fine. You can go eat and you can go home and sleep at home. We don't need you attached to the IV anymore. We can give you medicines from here. They're like, do you need a chair? Can we push you out? Because I hadn't eaten for 5 days, right? And they don't know I had eaten for days before that. I'm like, no, I'm ready to go. I got dressed, put my coat on, and just walked right out. I'm like, I felt great.
Wow. So you've done, you started out keto and then you switched to more carnivore. Is that right? And
yeah, say about I'd say about September or so, I started to stop eating the few veggies that I ate. I would eat, occasionally a spinach. I like broccoli, I like asparagus, things like that. But I just noticed that if I didn't eat them, I felt a little better. So the portions kept getting smaller. I'd cook a bunch, and then some of it would go to waste. And I'd put it, it would just get thrown away. So I stopped eating it, and then I realized, wow, I feel way better because I think I have a lectin problem, among a bunch of other sensitivities. But I just feel so much better, and I started doing that, last fall, and I haven't looked back really at all.
And so, have you noticed any other changes since keto to carnivore, other than just generally feeling better?
Yeah, the IB, like stomach, the GI symptoms, they pretty much go away.
Wow. What would you say, Michael? Like, you kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm always trying to find like a way to. It's hard to do, but if you had a very good friend that was going through bipolar like you were, what direction would you give them? Because this is also overwhelming. Like, what do I do next? What's the first step?
Sure.
You kind of talked about before, like how to get into eating this way, but is there a resource?
How would you search and figure out what to do?
Yeah.
The first thing you absolutely want to do is go to metabolicmind.org. Because as you know, the Bazooki Group funds that. They're amazing people. I met them at the conference. Just great. And Dr. Schur came up and shook my hand. It was awesome. Because he recognized me from the podcast and different things, Start there because they have links to providers, but there's not that many. So you might not be able to find a doctor that's very accommodating at first. But my suggestion is doctor shop. That's always my advice when I go to support groups and things like that, and people aren't happy with their meds and the doctor won't listen to them about their side effects and the medicine that they don't like. They're like, keep trying it, they'll add another medicine on top. I always say the same thing, doctor shop. And that's what I did. And I had to fight to get. And the Dr. Georgia Eid has, she's a diagnosisdiet.com, I think. She has the best directory of providers, and you can put in your country or your state, and then coaches will come up and doctors will come up. So you might not find a doctor, because I've been sending lists to people, that ask me, that go to my website, michaelb.help. They chat me and say, hey, how do I, find a provider? Because I won't help coach anybody with mental illness unless they have a psychiatrist and they're actually telling them what they're doing. But yeah, that's what they need to do. And then you can find coaches on there. And if you can afford it, a dietitian is definitely recommended. Because everybody's different. Somebody might have a vitamin D deficiency like me, or in the last 2 months, I have potassium problems because I haven't been eating a lot, and because when I eat just meat, I don't think I get enough potassium. So I'm starting to step up how much I eat, and it's starting to help. So I get some labs coming up. But how good did I do? Because that's really the first place. But the second thing, go to Bipolar Cast on YouTube and watch patient interviews. Yeah. There's a dozen of them, and if you don't believe those people, I don't know, how to help you. Hopefully, eventually, you see that and go, you know what, my diet's not that important. My mental health is, and you say, I need to try this. And give yourself Dr. Georgia Eid says, give yourself 3 months and say, I'm not changing my life, or hopefully I am, but I'm only going to make this 3-month test and see how you feel. And I guarantee you're going to look at food differently. You're not going to have the carb craving that you have in you now that makes you want to eat the food that you're eating. That completely goes away. When you eat and you have satiety and you're not hungry anymore and you don't have to eat again until the next time, it's just so liberating and freeing, and you start looking at food differently. You start looking at things as, oh, that's the thing that makes me sick. It's not just the thing I love to eat.
Yeah. That's great advice. On the metabolic mind front too, I just want to encourage people. I'm skeptical about doctors because all my issues over the years and people giving me advice in general. Metabolic Mind is awesome because they're they're just this group that have dedicated all of their efforts. So I believe it was Matt's mom and dad that started that group,
Yep.
and Matt had bipolar, and they're like, we want to just spread the word. They're so excited about what happened for Matt. So they're literally just dedicating their life and their resources to helping people and sharing these stories. And Dr. Schur's just he's a great host, great videos on there too. So Metabolic Mind is great. And the thing you were saying too, with seeing the examples from others, I think that's what's so powerful. That's why we're doing the documentaries, just put those examples out there. Like, there's so many individuals, people watching this right now that may be hopeless with depression or bipolar or other mental health issues. I was hopeless at one time. Michael was hopeless at one time, but there is hope. And when you see those stories, like Michael's story or all of the other stories out there, it's hard not to get fired up or inspired. I tell people too, with the people have trouble wrapping their brain around, how am I going to do this? It's so drastic. It's almost insurmountable. But like Michael said, you could do anything for 90 days, and don't go into it like, I'm going to go carnivore for the rest of my life. I'm going to eat only meat for the rest of my life. No, I'm just going to do an elimination diet for 90 days and eliminate all of that garbage that humans were never intended to eat. I'm going to give myself the privilege of seeing what it can feel like to actually feel like a proper human being without that brain fog and inflammation, and just see how it works out for you. It's I think that's great advice. And I love how you mentioned too, Dr. Eid. She's got that directory. That's the question I get all of the time. So that's a good resource I'm going to share with people as well.
It's not as big as it needs to be, unfortunately, right. But it's common. You know, there are providers making treatment centers for, you know, if you can afford it, because insurance doesn't pay for this yet. But there's all kinds of studies. Dr. Campbell's had some good study results that came out recently. Dr. Shabani Sethi in Stanford in California has had a good study that just got published. You know, there's so much good stuff going on. A lot of it funded by the Bazooki Group, which is great. So thank you, you know, Matt's mom and Jan and everybody, you know, family, and Matt. Now, inspired by Matt and Ian, I made a podcast as well. So that I should put a plug to that if people want to hear more stuff and information with author Diane Harwood. She's vegan and does keto, which I don't know if that's a surprise to anybody, but you can do it that way because it's a way of eating. It's not a diet. You know, it's like eating more fat than carbs, you know, eating very low carbs and eating a lot of fat and moderate protein. That's keto. It's not the stuff that says keto on the bag at the store. And it's not, you know, any of that stuff. And we talk about our lived experience, and we interviewed Dr. Eid, our last episode. So that's on there. Her book is amazing. Anybody, that's the number one thing you should do, actually, besides even metabolicmind.org, is buy that book.
Yes.
That book is amazing.
I literally, I cried. I cried after reading that book, because I said to Dr. Eid, had I found this in the deepest depression, this was like the piece of the puzzle I was looking for. It's so well done too. We're talking about Dr. Eid's book, Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. And
That's right.
It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. It's incredible. And Chris Palmer wrote a book too, Brain Energy, which is very good. I like Dr. Eid's book because, like you mentioned, Michael, she gives you options in the end. It's not like you have to just eat meat and only meat and do this. No, it's like you could do this or this. And then if this doesn't work, you do this. There's recipes, there's meal plans. But the thing for me was, it's like, this is such a thick book. I'm not that big into books, but I couldn't put it down. For the science that's in it, it's so well written that it keeps you going. It's a great book. I think she said she worked on that for like 10 years or something. It's just incredible.
Right. Oh, I got to say the name of the podcast. So it's Our Healing Journey with Metabolic Psychiatry on YouTube.
Our Healing Journey with Metabolic Psychiatry. I'm going to have a link to Michael's YouTube channel, his podcast, and your website you mentioned as well in the description. So everyone go check that out for sure. Wow, this has been great. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I have for you. I know when we get off here, I'll think of some more. But is there anything else you wanted to mention that maybe I missed? Or
no, it just I can't express enough how bad it was and how it feels like another world today.
Yeah,
I can't express that enough. Like people did channel during the nastiness. People did victim channels, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but where they would say, I have depression, or I have, adult diagnosis for something, or, like all kinds of different things, which apply to me too. but I'm like, I'm not that in that space anymore. I'm in the like, what do you do after? Like, how do you rebuild your life? Because it's not instantly like everything is fixed, right? Like, I'm still same. I still have to deal with everything that I happened before, so I'm still rebuilding. So I'd say, I don't know. I'd try it. 3 months. That's all you got to do. But if you do have a serious mental illness, make sure you do it with a doctor's care so that you don't get in trouble, and consider hiring a coach, because what you think is simple might be simple. There's lots of different troubleshooting things that you got to do sometimes. You can get sick, you could have stress, you could have different vitamin deficiencies, like all kinds of different things. But a coach can help you reach out to the right person to figure it out, or help you figure it out, and troubleshoot and actually make it work, where you're not going to say, oh, it didn't work for me. That's usually not the case. It's usually that you didn't implement it right, in some way. I think those are the key points.
I totally agree. Just to restate that too, if you're on any medication and you were prescribed those, 100%, you need to talk to your doctor. That's a big mistake people make. Oh, I'll just wean myself off. Absolutely not. You want to talk to your doctor. And your point on the coaching too, I used to be so cynical, Michael. I was just like, what, you eat meat? Like, what's so hard about this? No, I was completely wrong. The coaching, the community is a huge, huge part of this, because we're living in a world where we're kind of the weird ones. We're the odd ones out. I like being the weird one. I like people that are weird. It's more interesting to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
when you're living in a world where you're the only one out, you got to have some like-minded people to talk to, someone to guide you along. There are lots of little nuances. I get comments from people all the time where it's just like they're just doing something a little bit wrong and they just need a little bit of coaching or a little bit of personal touch. And I mean, that could be life-changing if they fall off the wagon. That's one of my biggest worries. I'm never falling off it, but I've actually had nightmares before, like, oh my God, what? I'm eating a cupcake right now. Like, what happened? Oh my goodness. But like, I guess it's more so going back to that earlier life. I never in a million years would I want to do that. But I see people that are close to failing just for simple reasons that coaching could have helped with pretty easily. So
yeah.
I guess the last question.
Thing either, really. It can be, coaching for a little interim turn. You need a little nudge, and then maybe you don't need it for a while.
Right.
That's
Exactly. Maybe like the first 90 days or 30 days, just getting into some of those harder parts of it for sure.
Yep.
So, Michael,
and I didn't appreciate, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't appreciate too, like when I did the training, it made me appreciate other people's needs were different than mine. So for instance, if you don't have bipolar and I'm going to coach somebody that just wants to feel better, right? Maybe a little bit less brain fog and a little bit more energy. They don't need to be as strict. They don't, maybe they need 50 carbs a day to feel better, or 100 even, because they cut junk food and seed oils and things like that. Right. So you can help people in a whole lot of different ways. And I don't think I saw my view. So the training taught me that, that everybody has a different view. Everybody has a different need and needs a different plan.
That's great. Michael, my last question for you is, you're pretty passionate about this. Why are you so passionate about all of this?
Oh my gosh. I said this at the beginning of my talks. I go to support groups for bipolar, and I feel for these people so much, because I was sick so short a time ago that there are groups that have seen me sick and now see me and they're like, oh, wow. You seem to be doing great. Like, I care about those people so much. I want to help people with bipolar and schizophrenia. I have close relatives to me that, are not as, receptive to the thing. And I hope someday through my example, because you can't make anybody do anything. They have to come to it on their own in their own way, or else it's not going to work. They say, I did that for my dad or my uncle or my cousin, you know what I mean? Or my brother. But they don't, they haven't made the decision themselves. So you kind of just got to be there. And that's what I'm doing. The example I'm out there with the podcast and the coaching, and it's all I can do. I can't do enough.
That's wonderful. I love it. You're paying it forward. You're helping other people. You're inspiring people. So if you want to learn more about Michael, I'll have all of his links in the description below. And this has been a pleasure, Michael. Thank you so much. I always say this, but it sounds kind of juvenile or something, but I'm your new friend. If you ever need anything, let's stay in touch. I really enjoyed talking to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.